Okay, everybody. Welcome to the station. In the beginning, I want to apologize. Actually, not working. So if you cannot see from where you are, then you want to move. There are a lot of chairs behind the posters. If you can use. Okay, so in the beginning, we would like to thank our presenters, students, and faculty who do research at the field station and actually increase our knowledge about the ecology and the biodiversity of the field station. So thank you for the presenters and also for all those sponsors. We have also either funded research at the field station or just research done at the field station. Also, we would like to welcome and introduce our provost, Scott Furlong, who is also a sponsor of the small grants, in addition to the Dean of Art and Sciences and Rice Creek Field Station. I would like to apologize, our Dean is not feeling good today, so she's not going to show up.
You all hear me? Okay. I'm thrilled to be here. Do I get to speak twice as long now that Kristen's not here? I'm not going to do that to you. Thank you all for coming. I love this event. I think I really, the first time I was invited to come up to here, come here about 6 years ago, I was really blown away by the presentations at the time, and I'm most excited as well. What a blessing we had here with the Rice Creek Field Station, even in early November when it's a little bit gloomy outside. So I'm really looking forward to it. I want to thank the Rice Creek Associates. I want to thank Kamal and Kristen for the work they do up here, and thank all the students and faculty and community members that are continuously up here doing work, doing their research, maintaining the facilities, and just providing SUNY Oswego with really a gem that we have the ability to come up here and use. So I won't take up any more time. Thank you all for coming, and I look forward to hearing what everyone is going to talk about today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Another couple of minutes before we get started. I'm Mike Foley. I'm a board member of RCA, past president. Unfortunately, Laurel couldn't be here tonight because she herself contracted COVID. So I'm stepping in her stead. And I just want to mention that we have membership for students, especially $5 to become a member of RCA. We have other levels of membership at various prices. All the benefits are the same. It's just what you feel comfortable to help support us to help with these small grants. We do fundraise for that, and I believe this is our 27th year of doing the small grants. So that all came down to Peter Rosenbaum back in 1996, 97 with this idea. And we started out slow and small, but steadily through the years, it did increase. So we have membership forms there. We have a little brochure about what Rice Creek is all about. And there are also books available for a 25-year study on the butterfly populations here. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have on that on the way out. And I think that's basically, oh, one more thing. If you haven't signed in, okay, please sign in on your way out. It won't be a sign out, it'll be a sign in when you're going out, okay? We just like to keep track of the numbers of people who attend these events. So please make sure you do that. Okay, thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Andrew McElwain. I'm a biology professor here at the college, and I'm the Small Grants Committee Chair for Rice Creek Associates, and I just want to say thank you all for coming out here. And our Small Grants program is basically for students, faculty, and members of the community to write a project, and it has to involve Rice Creek Field Station or the grounds, and it doesn't necessarily have to be scientific research or have a science theme to it. We're trying to make it as inclusive as possible. The awards now are up to $3,000, and that goes towards your supplies, also salary for students, potentially if you were working over the summer. Or it doesn't necessarily have to be a summer project. It could be, any time of the year. But I think most commonly people do it during the summer. So I'd like to encourage people to apply to small grants. The deadline is coming up in February. And we also are encouraging people to write a proposal that includes maybe doing some kind of study about the upcoming eclipse, which I believe is in April. And without that further ado, let's have our speakers come up here. We have some really interesting speakers here today. Some people talking about insects and also talking about birds. So let's hear what they have to say.
Hi everyone, my name is Mohamed, and can you hear? Closer? Alright, there we go. Hi everyone, I am Fishel Connors, and I am so happy to be having Kamal with my presentation. I am going to introduce you to the Rice Creek Bird Observatory, which was my project for this last summer. So to begin with, what is the project goal? The project goal was to establish a monitoring avian survivorship and productivity program, or I said that backwards, but okay. And run that over the summer and survey our local bird populations while doing so, and also do some public outreach and collaborate with other researchers while we do that. So here you can see we have a student who graduated recently helping out, banding the birds with me in the background, and then some of the public outreach we did in support. So what are the big terms that we're talking about here? Bird banding is essentially capturing birds and then giving them a band around one of their legs. They can be color bands as well, so that is good for on-site identification. And this allows us to eventually, at the banding station or other banding stations, recapture them, and then we can get an idea of where they've been, how they've changed or grown, what part of their molt they're in as well. And maps basically take advantage of banding in order to establish all around the North America different banding stations. So birds will be caught all over the place, and we can see where they've been. And so what work did we do here at Rice Creek Field Station? For one thing, the part that they don't talk about is setting up the net lanes, which was a fun adventure and lots of Flora Rosa, getting stuck in your life. And then we actually can get to capturing the bird. So early mornings, like 5 a.m. normally for us, setting up the nets. And then every 30 minutes we go out and we check and see. And then when there's a bird, we pull them out and we tag them. And another part of this is processing the birds. So we will basically take their weight after banding them, take their wing cord, which is from their shoulder to the tip of their wing. And it gets kind of repetitive at times, but simultaneously there's a lot of cool things that happen, such as here, Dr. B is holding a golden winged warbler, which is a rare bird around here because they're actually breeding themselves out of extinction or into extinction with blue winged warblers. And then this is a capture zoom measure, my favorite photo of all time. And then you will never forget the day here. There's a raptor in that section. We ended up actually capturing a broad-winged hawk, at one of the nets because it was trying to eat a cardinal. Cardinal stayed, no birds were harmed, but he was very concerned, very confused as to where he was. And we also see here some students coming and helping with the research. And here we go again, poor hawk, confused. But what this also allows us to do is it allows us to get a good opportunity to take photos of these birds, which a lot of people have a great opportunity to do it. So it's nice to get these photos. You can see here we have a red-bellied woodpecker. I believe that is a thrush. What can we help?
It's an ovenbird.
Okay, so same family.
A thrush-like warbler.
A thrush-like warbler. Again, this brown hawk, hilarious all the time. And so what are the actual results? Well, we managed to catch 512 birds total and ban them, with over 600 captures in total, so that includes OB caps. And we got a total of 52 unique species, which is brilliant. That golden warbler was definitely a highlight. And technically, if we count unbanded birds as well, it'd be 54. We caught a few hummingbirds and then the broad-winged hawk we couldn't ban. And this is 109 catbirds, which is a fifth of our count for birds. A lot of catbirds. You learn them really well. And we can see here are how each banding day went with how many birds we caught. It kind of leveled out somewhere in the middle, increased again, fell, patterns of migration. And then also here we can see what our species counts were. So how many species we were catching per banding day. It increased pretty good in the spring, which is what we kind of expect because of spring migration. Evens out in the middle, we're catching the same species almost every time, and then increases again as we see fall migration happen. I mean, you start seeing this. And that was an amazing first year that I'm happy to announce those numbers about for the Rice Creek Banding Station. Now, what is our outreach like? Well, for college, we have an increased amount of research opportunities for students in the local area. Because now we are creating a long-term data set, which is amazing to hear because a lot of the time students are unable to actually get long-term data due to them starting, say, in their junior or senior year. But this allows them to get access to more data from a longer time span, which is really cool. And I'm very excited to see what future students do with this. And also it makes these opportunities of seeing how we catch birds and research opportunities more accessible because we can do this pretty frequently during the spring and fall. And if any student is over the summer, they can experience this. But normally, otherwise, you really only be able to experience like this if Dr. B is running a missed net demonstration, which is only occasionally. Or if you take his ornithology class, which I am excited to take one day. Right, our public outreach. So one thing that's super important is including our public communities in our conservation efforts. And banding is a conservation effort. It allows us to see how our populations are fluctuating. And also increases interest in the banding station itself, which is important for funding these types of grants, which allow me to do this. As well as it's good for the safety of the birds and the researchers. One thing that is about this is that we are putting birds or capturing birds in nets. Birds are not harmed, they hit the net, they fall into a pocket, we pull them out, fairly seamless, but they are still going to be in some distress and have to cry about it. So if someone comes across these nets and tries to pull the birds out, they might end up hurting birds. So it's important. Or they might have dogs that might go with birds. So it's important that we keep our local communities updated on what we are doing with our research, so that way they know how to handle themselves around it and don't end up hurting anybody or themselves or creatures in the process. So another part of the summer was a lot of collaborative research, especially with students from ESF. which was an absolute delight to experience. For example, we had one student, Sam Long, who was doing research on ticks, particularly ticks on birds that have heart disease. And so far, I have no updates on the research, but I'm excited to reach out to them and see how that's going, actually. We also have some collaborators who were looking to see how the wildfire from in Canada coming down, the smoke that came down during July or June 2023 was impacting our bird feathers and bird species in the area. So we would be collecting feathers from birds and sending them to there. Don't know how that's going, if we've sent them or not yet, but that was a really cool project because it's something that was impacting all of us. And it's unique to see, it's not something we get to study every day, especially up here on the East Coast. And we were also assisting with getting banders, so the people who have permits to, actually put bands on the birds, we were helping them get more experience, which is really nice to see. I believe we had one person who was seeking to become a master bander. Yep. And then we also had several students from ESF as well who were seeking to get their permits eventually. And this gave them a great opportunity to practice skills. So what does the future look like? Well, I'm very excited that we are going to hopefully increase social media usage in order to spread more awareness on the station and hopefully get more people to come out and see what we're doing, especially public. Right now, I believe it was mostly students in the fall that were coming out. And we also want to see if we can improve our methods for the annexation. So that will include things like how we set up the net, if we make that more efficient, if we need to move nets around, so what nets are catching more birds, which ones are catching the least. And I am excited to hopefully hear that this banding station goes on for years and years ahead, and we can create more and more data sets for students to use. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I can do my best to answer.
You ever get a response from, hey, we got one of your banded birds here and helping you trace the migratory patterns of them?
So far as I'm aware, we haven't, but I am very excited for the chance that we do eventually get one of those birds, because I think it's exciting to see where Rice Creek birds is gone. Like, we're putting bands on these birds for a reason. I want to see it in action,
We actually did have one bird. We had a warbler that we caught here in the spring that was captured later in the spring up in Cranberry Lake, the ESF biological station in the Adirondacks. So that's a piece of migration that we know for sure that bird took that we would not have known unless we were banding.
Right. Have you ever grabbed a bird that had a band on it already?
Did we catch this year? I don't think we caught any birds that were already banned.
Yeah, no.
But
all
the
the birds
more,
we kept for ours.
yeah, but the more you run a banding station, the greater your chances of doing that. So that's one of our goals.
Be tremendous to see some that really go south that they wind up in Mexico or something.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I'm going to follow up a little bit. I mean, there's banding stations everywhere. Is there a central database, or are you all maintaining your individual databases in terms of trying to see where things are going?
So that's actually what MAPS is for. I should explain that a little better. So MAPS is essentially a overall database that these banding stations are participating in order to increase, basically create a bigger spatial data set of where these birds have been. So it's a big collaborative effort across hundreds of banding stations.
Is Rice Creek's name on the bands?
They're not on the bands themselves, but when people will look up those bands, they'll see that the original place that they were banded at would be the Rice Creek Bird Observatory, which is what our official name for the banding station is at Rice Creek.
Do you know like what the yearly like budget is, and like would that include stipends? Like I'm just wondering how much it costs like a year to run this banding station.
So as for the cost of nets, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's like 160 a net about, yeah. Which was a real shame when a dog ran through one of them. That was the time. But as for the banding station itself, I got a $2,000 stipend from, I believe, here, and then I also, Dr. V has another stipend available through the Shinman committee, I believe. Yeah.
Cool.
So I think that would be cover most of your costs. I'm sure you could also look into other grants. The RCA grant in particular might help out a lot with the housing costs if you're looking to stay on campus over the summer.
Interesting. Thank you. Here's the picture.
Okay. My name's Stephanie. Mine is a little bit different. My project is a little different than the other two here today, and that it is not strictly research. Mine's kind of more of an art project about the Infested recipe. So let me walk you through the process. Just to tell you about me and the other things I do here at Oswego. One of the things that I do already with insects is I do participate in the monarch sampling here for OE, which has been long term, and I'm now doing it for my research requirement as well. So that'll be 2 years for me. I did take entomology, which is where I have the knowledge of pinning insects and preserving insects, and how to categorize them and what to look for in their anatomy. And I'm now a TA for that this year. I also took herpetology, which is one of my favorite classes, and that will also be something that I TA for. I participated also in the bird strike research, collecting some of the birds that they use to do that analysis. And then for the window strikes, I did this summer as well an internship at Rosemont Gifford Zoo in the carnivorous department. And then I also participate in the amphibian sampling, also goes on. So I definitely do, I'm not strictly bugs, but I do have a large appreciation for them, which is why I chose them for this project. My past in art and crochet, I did a lot of art and stuff in middle school, high school. They encourage you to do that, it's a requirement for you to do that. I was in clubs, I did theater, I painted, I did some art during COVID time, but when I got here to Oswego, unfortunately, a lot of the clubs weren't happening because it was COVID. I came here in 2020. So my first year, I didn't really get that chance to join any extracurriculars that would give me a chance for art. So we did things on our own, like this is a sunset from Oswego on an Oswego rock from the lake that we did in our much free time of fall 2020. And then about a year ago, I got into crochet, and that's where this idea came from. So I really have not been at it very long, but I like the idea that it's very dynamic. You can kind of create whatever you want if you know what you're doing, and then you can create useful things. You can create more art pieces. So I came up with the idea in early February, and I wrote the proposal. And Dr. Mohamed suggested that I make a model to see what this would look like for the proposal. So I picked this species. I didn't really have any physical insect to look at, but I looked up as much as I could in terms of anatomy. And I made my first model in about a week. Yes, so that is a veg-straw hawk moth. And then for one of my specimens you'll see later is actually a very closely related moth. All right, so my process started with field work. I went around Rice Creek a lot and I saw what can people see when they come here. I wanted to be able to pick things that would occur at Rice Creek that people could find but weren't super common and people already knew a lot about. Then I had to pick my specimens, which I got from here and from Shinneman Teaching Collections. I had to order my materials, I had to make them, and then I had to put them in display. So fieldwork. Recently, all the way on the right over there, I did a UV blacklight to try to attract moths. It didn't go great because it's a little cold, but it's something very easy to do and very cool to do here. And I was able to come at night and set that up. And then throughout the spring and summer, I took a bunch of walks around and tried to see what I could find in terms of bugs in different places. Many of the species that I crocheted for, I have pictures of that I saw at Rice Creek. So those 4 pictures right there are a little look at the insects I chose, as well as some other insects I saw that I did not pick, and of course other species as well, because I can't just eat insects from here. So selecting insects, I had a lot to consider. What I first did before I even considered like what insects, is I looked at what we had. I had no idea what would be available to me in terms of here at Rice Creek, and then as well at Shinneman, there's a teaching collection, and there's an aquatic insect collection as well. So I looked at those and I kind of had an idea of what I could have. And then using my field work, I looked at occurrence to make sure that this is something that people could reasonably find at Rice Creek. I didn't want to pick something that either I had a specimen for or could occur here but really doesn't, or no one would be able to find. So that was a big consideration. Availability, even if I had a specimen that matched, it might not have been in good condition, which brings me also to like preservation quality. Some certain insects don't preserve very well for certain features. One of them is like crane flies over here. They're like 80% legs, and they don't preserve well at all. Their legs fall off, and they just don't look like the insect when they're alive. With that as well, over here is a monarch caterpillar, very tiny. I didn't want to pick anything super tiny either because I didn't think it would display well for you to contrast the specimen and the crochet model. And then soft-bodied insects as well do not always preserve well. You put them in ethanol, and a lot of the times they lose a lot of their color to the ethanol as well. Translation to crochet. There were some aspects of the insects that I didn't think I could really portray well in a model. For example, there's a lot of metallic coloring in insects, but I didn't think that there would be a good way to translate that metallic coloring using yarn. So I chose to stay away from a lot of those things with super tiny details that I didn't think I would be able to accurately replicate enough for it to look like the insect to my standard. Some insects, like this one, I really wanted to use this one. It's a really cool dragonfly larva, but as you can see, it has a bunch of spikes on the top, on the side, and I thought being able to get that 3D spikes using crochet is not going to be easy, and it was going to come out the way I wanted it to. So I decided to stay away from that. As well, I tried to pick a diversity of colors to represent. I didn't want all of my insects to be just brown. So that was a big factor as well. And I wanted definitely a range of insects with at least 5 colors. Oh, and then, of course, they had to be an insect. I couldn't pick any bug, which is why I had a spider up here, which was tempting sometimes. But I had to remind myself, it's insects. So these are the ones that I chose. And these are the actual specimens that will be on display. So this represents 7 orders of insects, and each of them is a unique family. I tried to pick kind of a range of colors, of different aspects of anatomy, things like that. A lot of them are a little bit bigger. A lot of them are also just kind of like an average size bug. None of them are super tiny. And we had good specimens here for them as well. Something interesting that I did not expect is that almost all of my specimens are not recently collected. I would say the majority of my specimens have identification tags from like 1965, which I did not expect that they would preserve so well and be some of the best quality ones. But if someone knows what they're doing and they do it right, they can preserve really well for a long time if you store them well. So a lot of these are also older than I am. Okay, materials. There was some stuff that I knew that I knew, like wire, fabric stiffener I used to make the things like wings stay in place more instead of being floppy. The display cases over there, those are the Riker display cases that are standard for insects. I already had set of crochet hooks and things like that, but I ordered more needles, more needle stitch markers. For the yarn type, I chose acrylic. I crochet super tight compared to other people, and typically cotton is used for 3D objects. But since I crochet so tight, it's very hard to do it with cotton. The spaces are way too small, so to have a little give is very nice. It's also known as one of the easier yarns to work with, as well as it's one of the most common, so I would have a lot of color choice. I needed a bunch of specific colors to match my specimens. I chose size 4 and size 3 yarn, which is a pretty standard size yarn compared to like size 1 and 2 yarn that's almost like string. So I wanted it to be something that would be able to give the detail, but would be adequate for size as well. Stuffing, of course, I really packed stuffing in there to try to get 3D shape to hold, and to make sure that it lasts for a long time as well, not going to deflate. For some of the very thin membranous wings, I chose the mesh fabric to use. And then, of course, safety eyes as well for when they're needed. And then I used just acrylic paint I already had and Sharpies for some of the smaller details. And instead of like crocheting in different colors, I could actually just kind of draw onto the model for very small details like that. All right, construction. It involved a lot of preparation and mental design for me to be able to do these. I, for the majority, did not use a pattern. I thought of a shape and I figured out how to crochet it and modify it to my needs. The benefit of crochet versus knitting is that it's very easy to take out stitches and redo it. So if it didn't come out the way it wanted to, I didn't necessarily have to like trash the whole thing and start over. You can take out half of it if you want. So that was very helpful to me in that I changed my design all the time. I looked a lot into anatomy to make sure that what I was doing was correct, not just what I was looking at, but to know what I was looking at, and to make sure they were accurate, that I wasn't just making guesses or assumptions on what the insects should have. Yes, I often started with a very simple base, and then added the details on as I went. They ended up pretty big, and I do have an example for a little later, but they're also quite significant in size in terms of how long it took me to make them. And then this is the display. This is how I displayed them. These are the Riker's cases. Usually these are meant for soft, like you would preserve your insects in these when you collect them for the first time. But these were already pinned specimens that are dry. And there are ways that you can go about denaturing them, but that was not my plan. So I really had to work to make these cases work for dried insects. And I had to cut the pins because the cases are about 3/4 of an inch thick. And the pins are like 1.5 inches. So I had to cut the pins without damaging the insect. And then fit them in here. I did paper backgrounds just to give them a nicer color to be against. And then usually, like the one on the left actually worked the way that the writer's case is supposed to, because the pin just slipped right out. It's typically completely full of like stuffing to kind of push it up against the glass. But because I had the pin and the paper in there, that wasn't something that I could do either. So I had to take out a lot of the stuffing to make sure that it didn't hit the glass and then break. Yes, and I tried to, for some of the specimens, like this one over here, give you kind of the top and the bottom so that you could see the details of the models on the insects that are displayed with it. Okay, so first, I can show you an example. So plastic wrap off of it because that's just to keep it stored nice. But for reference, this is what the insects look like in the display case. They're pretty small cases compared to a lot of the specimens here at Rice Creek that are large. But I wanted to make sure that they had the adequate space around them so you could see everything. I wanted to make them really visible. I did try to pick insects that were a little bit bigger and would display a little bit better as well. For the models, class for it because this is a larvae, an aquatic larvae. It's the only specimen I have in ethanol. But usually you see these, they're in cases if you find them here at Rice Creek. So I made the larvae outside of the case so you can kind of see that without having to look at a deceased specimen. So a lot of the detail I put in here was for the filamentous gills. I looked a lot into the anatomy in terms of how many leg segments there were, making sure those were correct. Looking into the mouth parts, looking into the different plates on top of each segment. They also have anal legs, which attach to the case and keep it kind of attached to itself. And then I do plan to display it next to the ethanol vial and kind of hang it up so you can see what it would look like in the case without the case. Yes, so, and I also added some detailing in terms of coloration. I tried to make it as specific to my specimen that I physically have as possible, rather than just the species details. Yes. So, going forward, I do have to finalize the display. It's out in the hallway right now, ready to put stuff in it. Does not have anything in it yet. But I have everything for the display ready to put in there. Besides, I do have some of the models to complete. So that's my next thing, is to complete all 10 insect models, taking me a lot longer than I thought it would. Largely because it takes a long time to add details, even if it's small details. Just by crochet, there's certain things you have to do for it, no matter what size it is. And I really wanted to make it neat and accurate. And there's been a lot of editing along the way in my plan. So I do have to finish those up. And then I would provide an educational basis to use these for programs. So because these are as anatomically correct as I could get them, they can be used as bigger models for learning about insects for here at programs at Rice Creek, for classes. The idea is that you wouldn't have to use either live insects that you would go out and collect for people who don't want to look at live insects, don't want to interact with live insects, as well as people who might be scared of live insects. And then with the specimen insects, they are very fragile typically. And they're very small, you can't see many details, and a lot of those details, like antennae, might break off as well. So this gives you a way to interact and physically touch the insects in a size that's more suitable. And then also it's just going to act as a display at Rice Creek to just appreciate the insect diversity here. And hopefully that'll kind of bring some appreciation because there's a ton of insect diversity here that I think probably goes underappreciated compared to the mammals and the birds. Yeah, and I graduate in May, so I will continue working on this project through this semester and into next semester for the education program. Yes. And that is it. Just a thank you to Dr. Simon, to Rice Creek Association, and everyone else who helped me out along the way. Does anyone have any questions?
I find it absolutely fascinating, the amount of detail and time that it took to research to get these things just right. It just shows your commitment to doing the best quality product that you can. And I'm just wondering, pick one that you've done and just give us an idea of how long it took you from deciding that that was the one you would work on to going through and coming up with your final product.
I had originally estimated, based on the model, that it would take about 15 hours for each of them. I was very, very off. It probably takes closer to 30 to 40 hours for each one. I do a lot of research into how to make them as specific as possible. And it's also sometimes hard to get information for a specific species or for a specific genus. There's a lot of information on orders, but as there's many insects, the rules of an order don't always apply to all the species in the order. So trying to really match up my insect with what I thought it was, because sometimes they didn't have identification labels as well. So I had to identify them kind of myself from scratch just to make sure, even if they did have an identification label. But yeah, it's probably 30 to 40 hours, my guess, for each one of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have plans to do another similar project in the future, like on a different taxonomic group, or?
Not officially, but I would also definitely for future grant awardees or just as a program here at Rice Creek or anyone who's interested to kind of open up the idea to either do insect models like mine or do them for any other taxa year. You could probably make them a little bit quicker for animals that are more documented, more well known. But yeah, I would definitely be open to doing that, either here at Rice Creek or just as a hobby. And then I would also be welcome to anyone joining me in this process and contributing either to insects or whatever they're interested in. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite one to crochet?
I did like this one a lot because it was a little different than the rest. And also when you typically see them, they're in a case, which covers from about here up past the legs. So you typically can't see a lot of this. It's very interesting to me that they're aquatic larvae and then terrestrial adults as well. I like the filamentous gills as well, which you wouldn't see if they were in the case because the water flows through the case. Yeah, and I just thought it was cool that it was also an ethanol, something that you can't really see as well. And probably are less represented in what the insects people know. And especially with the creek here, this is the perfect environment for these types of larvae to be found. Anything else?
Excuse me, quick follow-up. So that's a caddisfly, right? Is that a caddisfly?
Yes.
So I'm a big caddisfly fan. So I don't want to make more work for you, but I'm curious, are you going to make a case? It would be super cool to have it go in and out of its case.
I did think about it. I didn't know if sliding the case on and off would kind of ruin like the gills and the body propelling. I will look into it now. Yeah, I was thinking of kind of doing it with the yarn scraps because it honestly kind of looks like scraps of yarn. It's just a lot of vegetation up in a tube. Yes. So it's in play. Anything else?
I just wanted to share, we have a Zoom comment, someone who says, this is a terrific idea and a great way to teach the squeamish about bugs. That was Amy, and a request to bring the model close to the camera when we're all done here.
Yeah, I was not really interested in bugs before I took entomology. I wasn't really against them, but there's a lot of animals to like, you know. But I think something about them is really their diversity. I would say the most diverse group of animals, I think. There's just so many and so many different adaptions, and they're everywhere. So this isn't something that you go out, you know, and you say, I want to find, you know, snake today, and maybe you don't find it. You always find it. They're everywhere. And there's kind of infinite amounts of them to be discovered that are already described as well. And they just have the most wacky adaptions sometimes, the most wacky behaviors. I think they're definitely underappreciated and understated, partially because they're small, a little because they're fast. But they truly are an animal to appreciate. Then I'll bring them out. Anyone else?
Even a little bit closer, and then maybe just like rotate it. That's so cool. Rotate. I love those filaments of skin. Yeah, they are pretty cool. Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm really anxious to see the day.
Yes, they're very different. Each of them are very different process. This one doesn't have wings. Oh, that's true.
Good. I think that should be your next.
Find someone. Okay.
I was waiting for that. How cool was that? I knew I would say that.
Okay. When you're ready, you're Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Danielle Marichal. I'm presenting on the Emerald Ash Borer. I'm sure everyone's familiar with them and the destruction that they're wreaking on our glaciers. So my project specifically is a survey of the Emerald Ash Borer stations and dispersal induced parasitoid massive for me and Dr. at the time. So some backgrounds on the Emerald Ash Borer. They're an Asian beetle species, so they were accidentally introduced in the United States in the early 2000s, probably by lumber shipment because they do occupy countries in the early 2000s. And the beetle's larvae causes catastrophic damage to native ash trees, killing the trees 2 to 4 years on average, which is very bad. So in the beetle's native range, the ash trees they have quite a bit of resistance to the Emerald Ash Borer beetle. So you're not seeing the type of devastation that you're seeing in the native ranges of Asia compared to here. Our ash trees were just not equipped. They were not prepared. They had no reason to be prepared for an invasion of an Asian beetle species. They have spread at an alarming rate. So they've killed hundreds of millions of ash trees across 36 known states at the moment. And they're actually a threat to permanently alter our forest systems, which is very scary. And their range expanded to New York in 2009. and they have proliferated at a very alarming rate. And I'm sure that you've seen the damage just walking through Wright Street or in your own backyards. This is a photo of an emerald ash borer beetle. They're actually quite small. They're probably the size of my ring fingernail, but their larvae just really decimate the trees. They're in large numbers. So there are several diagnostics to see if the trees are infested by the emerald ash borer beetle. D-shaped larval boring holes are actually exit holes that the larvae make when they're leaving the adults. Bonding of the bark, I included a photo here. This is actually caused by woodpeckers. They know that there's a lot of juicy larvae underneath the wood, and they peck at it, and they cause this really severe deterioration of the bark. So that's probably the first indicator that you might notice, and you've probably seen on a lot of ash trees. Epicormic shoots is another indicator. You can see it. I have pictures of in the next few slides, but shoots on the bottom of the trunks, indicator of stress in the tree. So when you see those, the tree is definitely not having a good time. Lastly, but not all, would be crown decline. So the canopy is reducing. It's becoming quite sparse as the tree continues to decline in health. I included photos of the D-shaped holes. You see, that's very characteristic. It's very distinct because most boring holes are round. These are D-shaped, which is kind of unusual and kind of a quick indicator. These are the epicormic shoots that I mentioned. You can see them kind of sprouting from the sides. So a healthy tree, this is very stress-free if they are having the epicormic shoots. I took this at Rice Creek, Bluebird. So I don't know if everyone's familiar with biocontrol, but it's a practice of purposely introducing the natural enemies of invasive species to affected areas in order to control their population. So an alternative to that would be insecticides, which is, obviously going to indiscriminately kill a lot of beautiful native insect species, pollinators. They're also very expensive, a lot of insect treatments, and they're at an individual level most of the time per tree. So the introduction of natural enemies is an extremely regulated process. The USDA spends several years testing for specificity to ensure that the introduced species will not attack anything except the target species. So I know a lot of people have concerns about introducing species. I know it's been done before in the past, and it has not had great outcomes, but this is extremely controlled. Could everyone hear me? Sorry, I'm struggling with this thing. There has been many, tests to make sure that they only focus on the target emerald ash borer species and don't, wreak havoc like a lot of people might do. So I included a photograph of the larvae so you kind of have an idea. They create these really intricate, I'm going to use the word striations, but through the wood where they bore underneath the bark. So parasitoid wasps are parasites, but they're distinct from parasites because they kill their host in the process, so that kind of differentiates them. And they lay their eggs inside of their host larvae or eggs which is the larvae in the process. So after development, the adult wasps emerge out of their hosts ready to breed process. In 2007, 4 species of the wasp were approved for releases in areas with high infestation levels across the northeast United States. And the wasps that were introduced have had an enemy complex with the emerald ash borer beetles for millions of years. They were introduced they were actually the government sought out, and scientists were trying to desperately find some species that had an enemy complex with these beetles, and they had found them in China and Russia. So 4 species total. Since their initial releases, the parasitoids have helped manage emerald ash borer. The populations of the parasitoids establishing and dispersing successfully. So in the northeast United States and the colder regions where we are, 3 species are commonly used because the 4th does better in more southerly conditions. So Ubius nigrili, Spathius gallinae, and Tetrasticus minopensi. And here is Spathius gallinae. You can see this is not a stinger. I know a lot of people seem a bit intimidated by this, but it is an ovipositor. So stingers are modified ovipositors that are used to. These guys are specifically used for laying eggs, so they bore through the wood with their ovipositors because they can sense the larvae underneath, and they lay their eggs inside of the larvae, killing them in the process. So here are the parasitoid wasps. This is the Tetrasticus, a female who has a very distinct pointed abdomen. And this is Ubius, and you can see the scale. These guys are really small. All 3 species are very small. They're probably the biggest one is the size of my thumbnail. So this is the Ubius next to an emerald ash borer egg. So you can see how minute these guys are. So, like I mentioned, Rice Creek Field Station. Rice Creek has a very high amount of infested ash trees. They're home to several species of Fraxinus ash, including green, white, and black. It's widespread, like I had said, ranging from mild, severe to just dead, completely dead. So the diagnostics and the severity of diagnostics were around for the use of parasitoid releases to try to mitigate the problem on site. So starting in 2022, a 2-year release of the 3 parasitoid wasp species was conducted by Robert Smith, Terrestrial Restoration Resiliency Coordinator at Siloprism, forgive me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. So totally 2,347 Spathius, 5,652 Tetrasticus, and 2,200 to date. And I included a photograph of Rice Creek. Beautiful. So my proposal, basically, I wanted to monitor the establishment of the introduced parasitoids. I wanted to sample them on campus to kind of see their dispersal from Rice Creek because it is over 2.5 kilometers away, 3 kilometers away from Rice Creek Field Station. So to see that they had traveled that far would be a good indicator that they established and are doing quite well here. So I built 5 yellow hand traps over the summer. I'll explain kind of how that works in a few slides ahead. And my goal was to install them onto infested ash tree on campus. So since another parasitoid release happened early, sometime late August, I didn't want to sample at Rice Creek because there would be the risk of me collecting recently released wasps, which is counterproductive to what I was trying to do. And sampling on campus again. The second aim of my research is to perform a survey of ash trees at Rice Creek. I create a rating system to try to survey the damage from 0 to 4. There is no baseline currently to how bad the infestation is. So my aim is to create kind of some groundwork so people could reflect on it, future research in the future to try to replicate my surveys and see if things have plateaued or, hopefully not, things have gotten worse. With this information, it can be determined whether the introduced wasps have stabilized and they have helped diminish the emerald ash borer populations. So the yellow pan traps are what I use to collect specimens on campus. So in the next slide, I'll kind of explain what they're consisting of, but I created 15 total, and I built them over the summer, and I installed them late August on trees on campus that have signs and diagnostics of emerald ash borer species. The specimens that I caught were analyzed under a dissecting microscope in the lab to try to determine whether the species collected were our target parasitoid species. And trap settlement installation sampling procedures followed established USDA protocols. I refer to it quite a lot. There are several species of parasitoid wasp that look very similar to our target species, so I had to do some comparison work to try to see if I was looking at the right thing. And here is a photo of me installing the actual trap into an infested ash tree. This one is right at the lake. Here is another photo of one of my traps. This one is by an MPO library. So to talk about the trap itself, it consists of a shelf bracket and two plastic bowls. The first bowl being a holding bowl, and it has the drainage bowls that I kind of use. And then inside of it is the collections bowl. And inside of the collections bowl, I added ethylene glycol, which is a chemical that has a sweet smell and is very attractive to the insect, specifically parasitoid wasp. And the yellow color also adds to that lure. Inside the trap was also some soap to break the water tension so they would sink down, and some water to dilute. And that's where I would pour the bowl into a paint filter to extract the specimens inside, and then I would bring them to the lab afterwards. But you can see the damage on that tree. That is a lot of blending. The bark of this tree was in the worst shape of all the trees on campus that weren't dead. All the live trees on campus. It stuck out like a sore thumb, so I was very quick to find it. So I'm still in the process of going through all of my samples, but Dr. Sun and I believe that we have found this Trassicus male. So the male does not have a distinct pointed abdomen, and this male has become quite distended during the preservation process. So that abdomen is swollen and did not look like that when I was first collected. So we have pretty high certainty on the ID. They have kind of a unique feature on their antennae of these feathery little hairs that seem not very unique to the parasitoid wasp, and also counting the antennae segments and just checking the wings and checking all the kind of indicators of the right species. So a lot of studies are kind of showing that the Trassicus wasps are doing better in colder states and colder regions because of their cold tolerance. So these results are not very surprising to me that they've done so well. They seem to be kind of the best contender next to Ubius, our little guy. So this is my rating system. There is a rating from 0 to 4, with 0 being no damage whatsoever, from Emerald rating, kind of excluding any sort of disease or something else that the tree might encounter. 1 being less than 5 holes, 2 5 to 20 holes, bonding with the bark. 3 20 plus holes, bonding with the bark, and epiformic shoots combo. And then 4 being the tree is dead or just in completely great condition from emerald ash borer infestation. So the second part of my project, which is the tree survey, is still in progress, excuse me. So 200 points at 20-meter intervals to be taken along the blue route. I'm going to include a map in the next slide to try to show you my proposed area. I'm going to measure the tree. It's called DBH, diameter of the tree at breast height. And I'm going to find the species of the tree. I'm going to figure out which species of the tree is, green, white, or black ash. And I will rate the tree. So the goal is to make these surveys easily repeatable, so people could easily replicate them and not have to, go out of their. It's kind of along the route, so it's pretty straightforward, and I just wanted to make it as intuitive as possible for it to be completed again. This is the measuring wheel that I'm using. I'm walking with it, and then clicking every meter. So every 20 clicks is 20 meters. And that's where I find the closest tree, I do my measurements, and I rate it, and then I continue on. So this is the blue route, this small blue line, not the creek. This red dots, I kind of create a perimeter by looking at the proposed release site or not proposed, the actual release site of the wasp. So you can see an intersect. So we're going to be comparing regions where there are releases compared to surrounding areas. Yeah, so the work is in progress right now. I'm hoping to be completed by December, and I'll have all of my results. But I like to thank Rice Creek Associates, the scholarly and creative activity committee for grant funding. I would also like to thank the Department of Biology and all the staff at Rice Creek, including Dr. Haynes, Dr. Mohamed, Wendy. I'd also like to thank Kate Spector and maintenance staff for support and assistance, and Dr. Any questions? And I included how small the traffic is. This is not my photo, but they look just like me.
I think you remember some years ago, Dr. Helquist started a survey or a census of some of the ash trees before the board arrived. Have you had a conversation?
We haven't. We spoke briefly, but we haven't had to. We should talk. Send your email.
How many trees approximately have you surveyed?
So on campus, I have currently 9 trees. Most of them. Sorry.
Yeah, and please continue, but also on.
Oh, on Rice Creek. Oh, okay. So the tree survey itself, I'm actually probably 1/5 away there. I've had a bit of a delay. I've had some workload kind of time management issues, but I'm on a good track right now to be completed. But yeah, on campus I have 9 trees with traps on the tree.
How did you know how to build the traps in order to catch, like yellow's an attractive color and sweetness that you're at? Where'd you get that information?
The USDA protocols I refer to a lot. They gave guidance to people who wanted to try to monitor dispersal and establishment. So I followed it pretty religiously. They have it down to a science. So I really thank you.
I guess this would be more of a question for Professor Syme, but is there any active plans to continue this research as of now, or just like somebody might end up picking it up in the future?
I don't have any plans. Danny, unfortunately, is graduating in December. So yeah, I mean, but that was one of the goals, was to set out protocols here that then could be done year after year. So if a student wants to walk into this project, if it was part of their capstone research for years, we'd certainly love that. This going.
I'm also graduating. That's awesome. If someone picks it up.
How high up the tree do the borers go? Are they sort of stay near them 5-6 feet, or do they go in the canopy too?
They go up there. Yeah, I can't give you an exact point where they stop. I just kind of visually counted the holes.
So these are really tiny species.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure like what their normal kind of like dispersal would be, but were you surprised or were you expecting to, yes, like we're going to find them on campus having dispersed there already after a year? Like, was that surprising or was it expected?
I'm always impressed by these little insects. This is quite a feat to get from 3 kilometers being as I think yeah. So the research shows that they do disperse very well, but I also had personal kind of appreciation for them dispersing that far. But I was not too surprised because I knew about how successful the Caspicus was. So I kind of expected that to be the one that we would find.
Using your rating system, are there still ash trees at Rice Creek that have not been infected?
Yeah. We have a few that are holding out, I believe. I haven't completed my survey though, but I believe I have seen ones that holds.
There is more infection on the north side. There is not much on the south side.
Any other questions?
Nice work.
All right, our last speaker is Dr. Dunn, also faculty in our biology department here. And Dr. Dunn is going to be talking to us about the Rice Creek experience students have.
Thank you very much. I'm a classroom teacher, so do you need me to use the microphone, or are you good without it? All right. I can project sometimes. Hopefully, if I do trail off, please tell me to speak up. Well, darn it. Yeah. So thank you, Dr. McElwain, and thanks to Dr. Haynes, Dr. Mohamed. Thanks to our administrators from the Provost's office, the Dean's office, for giving the support to allow us to do these things. I really enjoy being here. I love my job to get to see some of the students and the awesome work that they do. And when Kamal asked me to talk about the student experience here at SUNY Oswego, I thought that was a great opportunity because for me and these students, we're in and day out, but for many of the folks around here who were not full-time associated with what we do, we just thought it would be a really good idea to give you kind of a little bit of a flavor of what students do in their daily habits and some of the coursework that they have to do and what it's like to be a zoology or to be a biology student here at SUNY Oswego. And I got to give some thanks, I guess, up front to Dr. Susan Hammerly and to Lisa Brancato, who provided much of the info on some of the first half or the first part of the slides of what I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the curriculum and some of the things that students have to do here. Also, I thought it was really appropriate, when Mike and Kamal, Andrew, kind of introduced the seminar, they introduced the situation that we're in here today to mention Peter Rosenbaum, our former colleague who passed a couple years ago, Andy Nelson, who was the director here, who passed earlier, and just to remember those folks. I remember as a brand new assistant professor at SUNY Oswego. I've been here for, I guess, about 2 years, but Peter Rosenbaum sent me an email and asked me to visit his genetics class. And Peter was instrumental in setting up Rice Creek Associates and in much of what we're here doing today. And he said, hey, I'd like you to come give a guest lecture in my genetics class. I'd like you to talk about such and come do this. And the date is, I forget if it was late October or early November, but the date is important, as you'll see in just a moment. And so I showed up to his class, and it was 2015. I'll never forget. It was 2015. The World Series was on, and it was the New York Mets and the Kansas City Royals. Now, I am apparently a glutton for punishment. I am a Kansas City Royals fan, and Peter, as many of you may know, was a New York Mets fan. And so I showed up to Peter's, not knowing. I mean, I guess I kind of knew that he liked the Mets, but I showed up wearing my Royals hat to this guest lecture. I had on slacks and a shirt and a tie and a Royals hat. And Peter showed up wearing his New York Mets hat. And I think that may have been the day of the decisive Game 5 when the Royals won. I saw Dan with a Boston hat on one of the pictures, and so we like pain apparently. Yeah, no, but in the Department of Biological Sciences, we have several programs that students can participate in. Students, many of the folks that you heard from today, I think I personally have had 2 of the 3 in was it genetics? Yes. Stephanie, I'm not sure what happened, but we never got, but there are Bachelor of Arts and of Science as biology majors. We have a zoology major in which a student can earn a Bachelor of Science, and then we have minors in both the biology and zoology topics. And within our department, we teach courses, and I'll briefly mention some of those courses that have prefixes in BIO and ZOO. Now, there are some differences between the programs. So a student coming to SUNY Oswego as a freshman may choose to be a biology major. They may choose to be a zoology major, but they can easily switch between them. Many students start as biology or zoology majors and quickly decide that what we offer is not for them, and so they may choose to go on to a different path in a different major at SUNY Oswego. And while we will miss them, we wish them the best in their new. But part of what differentiates the Bachelor of Science from the Bachelor of Arts would be some of the cognate courses that we require in math. If you're going to get a Bachelor of Science, you're going to do a BS in one of our programs. There are math requirements, including at least Calculus 1. You're going to have 2 semesters of physics, and just this slide was just to differentiate a few of the things in the BA. A student may, if they choose, take pre-calculus or calculus, and so a student who may wish to go into a program that doesn't require as much math, if they want to go into a career that's not as math intensive, or if you'll promise it doesn't leave this room, I'll tell you that when I took calculus as a freshman in college, I did not make an A in that class. And so some students, have a harder time with calculus. And so maybe the BA would be a better path for those students. In the math requirements, everybody has to have statistics. But in the BS programs, there are calculus, our introductory stats class that we worked with the math department, our biostatistics course called Measuring Life, that all of our students must take. And then the 3rd semester of math, students would have a choice of whether to take Calculus 2 or Statistics, the 2nd semester of either Calculus or Statistics. So there's just a little bit of the differentiation between the BA and the BS programs. Now, every student at SUNY Oswego has to take our general education programs, and there's many topics that they have to take in order to get the gen ed requirements fulfilled. And so, we, as many other, and which is common here, of course, in the United States, we do believe that a student must be well-rounded. They must have training in a number of liberal arts and other topics. And so we, in our department, support the general education. There are several courses which we teach in our department, which are not necessarily intended for our majors, but intended for other students who are not biology or zoology majors. We have a human biology course. We have a understanding evolution course. Andrew teaches biology 101, an introduction to what biology is. Teaches that every single year. So we do participate in some of the natural sciences courses, which fulfill general education requirements for students who may not be our majors. But returning to our majors, every person who is a biology or a zoology student has a certain list of courses that they have to complete. The biology seminar is a 1 credit hour course that meets once a week. Many of my colleagues here, Karen Syme, others that are here, and many of my faculty colleagues who are not here teach the seminar course, and that's typically, but not always, but typically that is taken by students in the first semester that they come to Oswego, either the fall semester as a freshman student or whatever the first semester is of a student who has transferred to Oswego, maybe from another four-year college, or maybe from a community college, they'll take a seminar course, an introduction to what the study of biology and zoology is, an introduction to how to succeed as a student, an introduction to the faculty and the different areas of expertise that the faculty and in the department have, an introduction to what career pathways may be available to a student. And so it's really a good intro to the program. And we like to do that early on, as I mentioned before, because if a student doesn't want to be in biology, it's better to know earlier than later. And so you can move into a different major, get into a career that would be more fulfilling if this isn't what you want to do. Although I don't know why anybody would make that choice. No, but in these core courses, usually in the second semester of a freshman's curriculum, they will take our foundations course, an introduction to molecular biology taught at a freshman level, an introduction to cell biology, a brief introduction to genetics, although we will have a more in-depth genetics class. I see many of the students in here who have had genetics from me. I am one of the professors who teaches genetics, and boy, if you ever want a good class, that's a good class to take. We have a sophomore level core course, Diversity of Life, which is a course that we've developed just within the last few years, that introduces students to, as the name of the course suggests, introduces students to the great diversity that exists within the biological sciences, introduces the students to the evolutionary underpinnings, and when we talk about deep geological time, about how life has changed over the tens and hundreds of millions of years and the handful of billions of years since the Earth has arisen. And it gives us a really good context into understanding how what we have here today, this great, beautiful diversity that we see on display at Raspberry Field Station, how it came about over the great amount of time. Before a student graduates, there are two capstone courses that we offer. All of our majors must take the capstone evolution course. This is a course that is taught by a handful of our faculty members. I believe, Susan, you teach it. Liz, you teach it. Dan, you teach evolution. Yeah. Eric, no, it's been a while, hasn't it? But you have taught it before. Yeah. So many of us do teach this course, but this is a writing intensive course. Students must write a lot, and written communication is a very important skill in the future workforce of everyone, but including among everyone, people who are in the life sciences. And so a student must pick some topic in evolution and do a deep dive into the literature of some evolutionary topic, and then do a synthesis in which they write about these topics. So all students are required to have the evolution capstone course. We have a research capstone course, which is not required for the Bachelor of Arts students, but they may take that for one of their electives if they choose. Most don't, but the research is also a really in-depth research environment. And I think so are you doing your research capstone for what you presented today? So yeah. Danny, yes, but right, yeah. So what you just heard today is pretty emblematic of the sorts of experiences that a student will get while they're doing this research course. They pick a topic, and so different people, different faculty members will offer research within their area of expertise. And so if you take it from Dan, you're going to do some aspect of ornithology or bird biology, behavioral type biology. If you take the research course from Kamal, you're going to have some aspect of botany and of plant systematics, and there will be some ecological components to the course that you take. And so students will choose what their interests are based on the various different offerings that we have out as our capstone courses, and they will do hands-on research. The students will form some sort of a research question, and then they will spend some time, and we have resources, laboratory resources, fieldwork resources, again, depending on what those students are doing, which will allow those students to perform the research. And then again, similar to the evolution capstone, it is a writing intensive course. The students are in a scientific publication format will write up the results of their research, and we see some really cool outcomes based on the research that students performed, as we just saw a few minutes ago. And often, occasionally some of these research opportunities rise to the level of publication. Some of the publications that have come out of the research laboratories of my colleagues and some of these students did often begin as research capstone courses. Within our coursework, we also have other courses which are not offered in our department, but which we as a faculty feel is absolutely essential in order to having a complete opportunity, a complete training within the life sciences. And so we can talk about, a student might take the ornithology class, or they might take the herpetology class, or these organismal-rich courses. And those are absolutely essential and valuable, but you've got to have a deep underpinning foundationally to the aspects of the natural sciences, which you can't truly understand without having an understanding of math, without having an understanding of physics, without chemistry, right? And so, there's 4 semesters of chemistry that are required. The general chemistry, first and second semesters, a training in organic chemistry, either the first or second semesters of organic chemistry, or there's a pathway that many students choose in which they'll take an overview of organic chemistry in one semester that treats all of the OChem organic chemistry topics within one semester instead of 2, but maybe not quite as depth of a level of teaching. And then for their 4th and final chemistry semester, they might take an overview of biochemistry. Some students, so maybe I should have put a little plus sign there, because many students will take 2 semesters of organic chemistry and will follow that up with either 1 or 2 semesters of biochemistry as their often 5th or 6th semester of chemistry coursework. I say 1 to 2 semesters of physics. A Bachelor of Arts student, we give them the BA major students an option of taking Physics 101. Or they may take the 2-semester physics series, and there's really 3 physics options. There's the 1-semester Physics 101 option, and then 2 different options of 2-semester physics, in which students can take an algebra-based physics, or they can take a calculus-based physics. And many of our students choose to take the algebra-based physics course. But when I talk to students, often I will kind of gauge their interest in, their ability in, and their willingness to engage in mathematics. And I'll say, hey, look, you got an A- in calculus. For those students, I might steer them towards the university physics, which is the calculus-based physics. And I'll say, hey, a lot of these aspects of physics make more sense in the context of calculus. If you understand what a derivative is, you can understand things like velocity and acceleration and some of the electromagnetic aspects of biology better using the language of calculus, even though it sounds hard and difficult. And even Dr. Dunn got a C+ in calculus, but that's not leaving this room, right? Right. So, so in physics, there's definitely opportunities for us faculty members as academic advisors to have these conversations with students to help them determine which of the various pathways within our curricula will allow them to meet their goals and will allow them to have an experience that is individualized to their abilities, to their needs, to their goals, and to what their eventual careers are going to be. Whoops. Briefly, I want to talk a little bit about our zoology majors. We offer the BS in zoology. A student must complete 78 credit hours, 78 course hours in order to finish the zoology degree. They have to take 3 courses in any 3 of these courses as their animal electives. They have to take 1 biodiversity class, 1 ecology class, and then a certain number of credit hours, and there's a range here of free electives in the departments. That's a number of courses, not a number of hours. And so a student included in that 78, and the number that you'll see in just a minute for the biology degree, those numbers will be slightly different. But included in those numbers are the chemistry coursework, the math, the bio. So everything in the program is included in those numbers. And so for some of these electives, some of them might be 3 credit hours, but some of them might be 4 credit hours. And so if a student takes all 3-hour classes for these electives, then they're probably going to have to take more of their electives here. If they take all 4-hour classes, then they may have to take a lower number of courses in the electives. And so this is kind of the accordion, this departmental electives. And so that's the sort of major electives that a zoology major would take. And then similarly in our biology majors, there are 3, and I did forget to put the number 1 next to the third area, but they have to take 1 course in organismal biology, ecology, and molecular and cellular physiology as being the 3 areas. Whoops, I got way ahead of myself. How did that happen? Yeah. And so the BA students will have a 61-hour requirement. The BS students might have a 76-hour requirement. And sometimes it's thought that students who take, who are Bachelor of Science majors will have maybe a harder row to hoe than the BA students. And if that's your only major, then that may be the case. But many BA students, we have BA students who go on to very in-depth, technically challenging courses or careers, but maybe they have taken a BA course of study because they also want to be a chemistry major, or they also want to be a business major, or they want to have a minor in photography and business management if they want to open a photography shop or go into so there's we really do enjoy having the flexibility for students to be able to tailor the curriculum to what their desires and what their needs are. And so thank you for putting up with all of the verbiage and the explanation, and now we'll get to the more fun stuff, right? So in order to get to more of the personalized student experience, what does it look like to be a SUNY Oswego student who is a biology or who is a zoology major? To segue into that, I want to indulge myself just a little bit and talk about a laboratory that actually that Joe and Sonia are in the animal physiology course right now. You did this just earlier this week, this laboratory where a student had to study, and this is a photograph of Elena, who is also in the class with you, who is doing this spirometry respiratory lab. Now, she is breathing through a spirometer, and there's a cardboard tube that is disposable, so we're not asking our students to actually put their mouths on the equipment. And so, we do try to maintain safety for all kinds of obvious reasons having to do with COVID and flu season being here and so on, right? But she's breathing into this apparatus, and on the computer screen that you don't see right there can be shown this trace, and it changes in real time. These deflections on the screen, as she breathes in, we see it go up. As she breathes out, we see it go down. Maybe she breathed in a little bit deeper because this peak is a little bit higher than the one right before, right? And so these are some of the sorts of data that can be collected in this particular physiology course that I teach. And I hope you'll indulge me for just a minute. I want to tell you a brief story about a student who came to my office about 2 weeks ago, and the conversation I had, one of the more rewarding advising conversations I've had in really a long time. The student, it was fortuitous. I booked the student for maybe a 15-minute appointment, but neither this student nor I had anything on our calendars for maybe more than 15 minutes. And so the student came in and was concerned, and really was not, frankly, very happy about the fact that as a biology BS student, this student was forced to take calculus. And I, could kind of see where the student was coming from. They wanted to study, a certain species and were interested in the behavior of that species and wanted to work and maybe doing field biology or maybe doing different things. And just why in the hell, she didn't say words like that, but why do I have to take calculus? Why do I have to take 4 semesters of chemistry? This just seems a little bit too much. And I said, have you got some time? Yeah, she had some time. And I said, next week, we're going to be doing this laboratory in my physiology class. Do you mind if I run next door and grab some of this apparatus? And I hooked the student up. It wasn't this student. This person is in the class, in the upper division class right now. But this freshman student in my office got hooked up to this, breathed into the thing, looked at this sort of thing. And I said, what do you know about calculus? Student said, nothing. I hated algebra and I'm going to hate calculus more. Why do I have to take it? No. I said, let's look at this for just a minute. Now, and I grabbed a little piece of paper and I drew some of these curves. And to be honest with you, I drew some of the curves a little bit exaggerated to show my point. But this line, or either the up or the down lines, now you're going to get the calculus physiology lecture for just a moment here. So if this is awful for you, please just take a little nap. I'll be back with you in just a minute. Right? But I drew this line and I said, hey, the slope of the line represents how fast air is moving into your lungs or out of your lungs. Right? So right at the very top and right at the very bottom, what's going on? You're breathing in, you stop. No air is moving, and so the slope of this line is 0. You're breathing out, and at the bottom you stopped, exhaling, no air is moving, so the slope of the line is 0. But think about this from the standpoint of a person with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Think about this from the perspective of somebody who has asthma. The fact that the lines go up and down, the traces go up and down for the fact that they can still breathe in and out are still going to be there, but maybe the shape of those lines are going to be different. And more important, maybe the shape's going to be different for me right now too, right? I better take a little bit of water. But more importantly, for someone, for example, with a pulmonary disease, the slope of those lines are going to be different. Now, maybe right here, that line for a healthy person like Elena here, who's on our women's basketball team, maybe that's going to be nice and steep of a slope, and it looks fairly straight. But in the paper graph that I drew, I drew a curved line, and sure enough, you can see that many parts of this are indeed curved lines. So if you've got a straight line, algebra, 8th grade algebra, you can rise over run. That gives you the slope, which tells you the rate at which air is moving into this person's or out of this person's lungs. But how can we calculate what the rate is in the curved portions of the line? Can you think of an experience or an instance where that might be really interesting, might be really important to know what the slope of that line is, how fast a person can move air, either at the end of the inspiration or maybe at the beginning of the expiration or at the beginning of any of these peaks. But how do you know that if the line is curved, right? And so in calculus, you will learn how to calculate what the slope of a line is at any one point on a curved line, right? And yeah, you'll probably take a whole semester to be able to do this. And indeed, when Sonia and Joe did this in the lab, 3 days ago, they didn't actually have to calculate any of these things, but they did have to understand the concept of a derivative. And thankfully, the software on our program, they just had to click a button and it gave them the derivative. But if you don't know what that is, the number on the button, you won't know which buttons to push. You won't know how to analyze those data. And so, I said a lot of our students go on to careers in healthcare. A lot of our students go on to be physician's assistants or nurses or physicians or respiratory therapists. And if they can do these sorts, if they're going to be in those professions, they've got to be able to understand some of these things. And so the students, ended up being in my office for probably 45 minutes or so out of a 15-minute appointment, right? But it was, but on the way out, the student said, "You've totally changed my perspective on what we, on the curriculum that you demand us to take. I'm no longer, angry or not understanding why you got to take calculus." And I said, well, this is just one example. There's 1,000 different things in all of the aspects of what you need to know in the life sciences. There's things in ornithology that Dan could probably tell us about how, hey, understanding the area under the curve in integral calculus really helps you to know how different migration, whatever's happened, right? And so it was honestly one of the more rewarding conversations I've had in a really long time, where the student comes in all grumpy and I don't know why the hell you're making me take calculus, to hey, this is really cool, thanks for explaining this to me, right? So that was kind of a cool experience, and we've had a lot of fun in animal physiology. This is just one of the cool labs we've done. We did some labs looking at membrane potential, and so we talked a lot about the different ions that are in the extracellular fluid, and so why do you have to take calculus? And so you can understand some of these things that allow nerves to work or allow muscles to work, and so understanding, you know, ionic flux and so on from your chemistry course helps you to understand some of these physiological principles. But it's not all chemistry and physics and math, as important as those things are. You know, in the coursework, we have our organismal or our topic courses within the departments in which we do cool things, right? So you're probably not going to find a student calculating membrane potential using logarithms and whatever to calculate that here at Rice Creek Field Station, but you will see people doing some really cool things here at Rice Creek Field Station out in other places, in which, for example, here's some photographs from Karen's course in entomology, in which they got to go see a beekeeper and understand some of the aspects that the students in this class. So a little bit of field biology, a little bit of dare I say, agricultural understanding from the process of honey cultivation, not only agriculture, but also you know, bees play a very important role as pollinators in many other both wild plants and agricultural plants. And so some of this in the entomology coursework was really important. Really cool things happen in terms of the actual student courses that people take here at Rice Creek Field Station. Right here in this very room, is, you know, many of our courses are taught here, and maybe the lecture portion of the course might be here in this room, and then the laboratory portion of the course might go out into the field station and do various aspects of data collection or observations, which will support or even sometimes some of the specimens are brought into the classroom, and some analyses can be done right here at Rice Creek Field Station using some of the specimens, but also using some of the laboratory equipment to understand different parameters and make measurements for the different things that we find interesting in understanding what's going on. And then, of course, also, I wanted to throw this in. We've got a fantastic trail system here. We just heard about, you know, we just heard about how sampling trees, it was perhaps not a mistake that many of those ash census sites were taken around the near to the trail system. And so there is a lot of work that goes on. And my hat's off to the volunteers, but also the full-time employees and the people who help to maintain the grounds here at Rice Creek. I have spent a small amount of time, you know, helping out with making some of the blazes on the trees for the Orange Trail, and it's been extremely rewarding for me and for my family to help out. And so just the fact that we have these fantastic grounds and we have these resources is, I believe Scott, the provost, used the word, it's a blessing. And you know, without getting theological at all, I think that, you know, depending on how you define that word, we truly are very lucky to have the Rice Creek Field Station as one of the resources which we can use to train students in various aspects of the life sciences. So other student experiences beyond the actual coursework. And I'm just going to touch very briefly on some of these things because I probably already used up my allotted time. But internships or other external partnerships or research. So students have had research internships at the herbarium on campus. Kristen has been involved very heavily in that. Right here at the field station itself, there are internship or research opportunities. We've had many of our zoology and even a few of our biology major students do internships at the zoo, and we heard mention of one of those today. This past summer, two of our Oswego students, one of which is a biology major, one of which is a zoology major, had a research experience for undergrads, is what REU stands for. And this is a very prestigious program that is funded by the National Science Foundation, and the NSF funds and you've got honestly to be a fantastic student in order to qualify to receive one of these awards. But two of our students had REUs. Well, I guess I put the slides out of order. I'll come back to the REU in just a minute. Right? We have a couple of different study abroad programs. Karen and Kamal, among others, are not the only two, but have been very active in offering study abroad programs. Susan's involved in it now, right? But here's a trip to Tanzania just this past year, and so people have seen a lot of wildlife, both plant and animal, in Tanzania. Have been able to learn from many of the scientists and experts in Africa, and have been able to have an enriching cultural and scientific experience. And this is just one of the things we also have planned. I don't know if the Israel-Palestine trip will run. It's not. It's canceled. I can understand why, right? But we had one on the books. But we have several opportunities for students to travel and to enrich their lives through this. So back to the two students who did an REU this past summer. One of them went to the Moat Marine Lab and worked with the people who rehabilitate sea turtles who may have been struck by a boat or who have washed up on shore. They also work with any of the cetaceans and any of the marine mammals who wash up. They are among the response group. And so this student of ours, Richard, was on call 24/7 throughout the whole summer if a dolphin or if a sea turtle washed up on beach, and he had a fantastic time doing this. Maybe not quite as sexy of a picture here, but, well, I guess neither one of them are truly all that exciting because he's in the lab and not on the beach responding to a sea turtle, but also in the laboratory. It's really hard to get a photograph of the technical work that one does in a laboratory here, right? But we've got one of our students, Amanda, in the blue lab coat here, working in a fume hood. She went to Utah State University in their bioengineering department, working on aspects of microbial growth and how that can help plant crops be resistant to drought. In the Western United States, drought is becoming always has been, but is becoming now an even larger topic in response to aspects of climate change, right? And so these two students really had, and they're both right now in the process of applying for PhD programs, and they'll go on to get their doctoral degrees and then to further their careers. And so in addition to doing the research, both Amanda and Richard here had opportunities to present their work. And so to talk about whatever complex chemical thing is going on with the bacteria that she was working with over the summer, and Richard talking about the sea turtles and doing some research and measuring different aspects and understanding better some of the basic biology behind what could help possible future procedures and protocols in rehabilitating and perhaps even in preventing some of these animals from having the difficulties which cause them to wash up on shore and require either cleanup of the carcass or rehabilitation of the animal, right? Just last week, just like literally 7 days ago, was it, right? A handful of our students went to the RAS, the Rochester Academy of Sciences, just up the street here in Rochester, and we're able to. Here's Joy, who's presenting some work that she did together with Susan, my colleague, and Dr. Jana Laurie and Nick Sark, and some of her other student co-authors who did this research with her. So the opportunity to give external presentations is a very valuable thing. And I was talking to Fish right before we started, and I said, "Hey, are you nervous to talk?" And And the answer was, yeah, no, a piece of cake, maybe just a little bit, right? This is a very friendly audience, and we appreciate the friendly. But science, the life sciences are mostly friendly, right? Especially, so it's a really nice opportunity to talk to people who maybe have never heard about what you've done before, right? And so, I mean, I had not spoken to Stephanie, but I do have a crocheted. I don't have an insect, but I do have a mitotic chromosome that was crocheted that I have in my, and you didn't make it, but a different student did. And so, some of the crossover between the technical sciencey stuff that we do, but also the technical sciencey understanding of the crossover between the arts and the displayed and performative arts. It harkens back to what I just said a few minutes ago about our Gen Ed program and how it all comes together, right? So Joy gave a presentation at the Rochester Academy of Sciences. Hey, look at this. Joe and Sonia gave, and Brandon, who's not here today, did some excellent work and presented a poster at the Rochester Academy of Sciences. Oh, hey, who's this? Somebody else presented, I think, right, at the RAS conference a week ago. But it's all thanks to the support from Rice Creek Associates, from the administration, from the excellent, fantastic students I have, from the almost as excellent and fantastic colleagues that I have. And so for you who are members of Rice Creek Associates, for you who's given your lives to be faculty members, for you who are spending this 2 to 4 years as students, I truly am grateful that you've spent a little bit of time with me here this afternoon talking about this. These topics, which I truly believe can be transformative in people's lives, no matter where you are. Students, absolutely, you're training for a career. Me, it's been transformative in understanding the educational process and understanding how research happens better as a faculty member, and picking up and building on the work that I did as a graduate student or an undergraduate student. And I'm truly grateful, and it's a really nice thing to be able to be part of an organization or of organizations like this. I thank you for your time, and I'll shut up now and take any questions that you have.
The token of our appreciation for your presentation.
Thank you, Mike. Very, very much appreciated. And in the absence of questions, thank you very much.
I'd like the presenters to come up here so we could get a group photo with your advisors if possible. Also, there are plenty of refreshments that are still available. Make yourself useful and fill up a little bit on your way out. And please, if you haven't already done so, sign in for us so we can keep track of this. Thank you very much.